Hello good people! For today's video, we wanted to share some of the most useful tips we could come up with for working with clear resin. So without further ado, let's jump right in! When it comes to working with translucent resin, gloss varnish is a painter's best friend. To properly show you how to improve the look of your minis using varnish, we will demonstrate this using different types of colored resin. Also, for this painting exercise, we will be using AK gloss varnish. There are many types of gloss varnish in the market, so find the one that works for you. In essence, by applying gloss varnish to your effects, you will enhance the transparency of the product. We will be focusing on one side of the product just to show you how different the end result is. To begin, start by applying a layer of varnish like so. Just by applying one layer, we can see just how different the resin feels. Here is the side we applied some gloss varnish on. As we can see with this red paint, the side with gloss varnish shows the color much better than the unvarnished side. With the help of a mini, we can also see the details will pop up much more when behind the varnished side. By applying more layers of gloss varnish, we can continue to enhance the translucency of the effect. It will be important to wait for one layer to be completely dry before working on the next one. As we can see in plain view, the difference between this side with no layers on and this side with 2 layers of gloss varnish on is quite significant. As we can see with this miniature, the varnished side has an almost glassy feel. While we can continue to add layers, we find that adding more than 2 layers of gloss varnish can be a bit underwhelming. Here we can see how adding that third layer of varnish does not quite enhance the transparency in the same way than the first and second did. Here you can appreciate the difference between layers. As we can see, there is no significant difference between 2 layers on the left and 3 layers on the right, but you can really see the difference between 1 layer and 3. Please note that any more than 3 layers could really take away the level of detail of the effect that you are painting. This same effect can be achieved on any colored resin. Look at how just one stroke of a brush make it more transparent. This will work on any color. The thinner the product, the better this little trick will work. Luckily, our shield effects are the perfect size. And now you know how to make your resin effects more transparent just with one easy step. Curing resin products helps make them more solid. However, we will look at how curing a translucent resin product can also mess with the way it looks. Here, we will cure half these shield effects for 30 seconds on our curing machine. Now we can see the subtle but noticeable difference between the cured side on the left and the uncured side on the right. Notice how the left side has yellow undertones. We can really tell the difference when looking at it from the side. So our tip is not to cure the product when using translucent resin, as to preserve the transparent feel of your effect. For this tip, we will try to paint translucent resin products using inks. For this, we will use these previously varnished shield drawn effects. We will show you 2 methods. For the first one, we will use Cansandora Yellow shade inks from Games Workshop own range, as well as lahmian medium for thinning the paint. The second option is to use contrast paints, also from Games Workshop range, as well as the thinner that goes with this sort of paints, technical contrast medium. We are using yellow and warm colors, but you can use any color you want. Let's dive straight in. For inks, we start by mixing paint thinner with the shade ink. Usually, for shield effects such as this one, I go with 2 parts of thinner and 1 part of ink. We make sure that properly mix the products. Here you can see the consistency we are looking for on our paints. It is important to note that a few layers of inks are usually necessary. As you can see, ink is very easy to apply and works wonderfully. We usually work our way from the inside out, dragging the ink towards the outside of the effect, keeping the center more translucent than the outside. And there we go! In just a couple of seconds, we have a very cool looking effect. But before we show you how to paint transparent effects with contrast, it is time of our mini tip of the week. Hair dryers are not just for the hair. Look, we are all enjoying taking our time to paint our minis, but waiting for things to dry is a hassle. Hair dryers will significantly speed things up when using inks or contrast paints. However, be careful when using hair dryers with your resin effect, since warming up the resin will make it more malleable. So back to painting. Similarly to inks, we will use 1 part of paint for 2 parts of thinner. As you can see, the end result will be thicker than when using inks. This also means the colors will be more intense when using contrast paints. Just look at how much more intense the right side is. Just as with inks, we will apply several layers for the best end result. This all takes us straight to our next tip. Transparency adds a whole new level to your minis. Usually we painters are looking to cover the whole miniature, using light and dark colors to add contrast. However, when painting transparent resin, we can do much more. We have seen just how easy it is to paint the shield effect using shades and contrast, to keep the transparency as part of the miniature. In this part of the video, we will show you how to play with transparency using varnish or the paint in very specific ways. Let us show you. When it comes to the shield effect, we have talked about moving from the center to the edge to keep the center more transparent, while adding contrast color on the edges of the effect, enhancing the feel of our miniatures. Here we show you how by adding more color on the sides, leaving the center with a thin layer. Just look at the contrast, with bright colors on the sides and very ethereal feel on the center. Let's now play with some varnishes to add even more contrast. Continuing on the example of the shield effect, we will mix using matte varnish and gloss varnish. By applying matte varnish on the explosion small part effect and glossy varnish on the shield surface, we can enhance the transparency of the effects using the matte explosion as contrast. Here we can see the end product. So we have seen how just by using varnish and ink, we can use transparency to our benefit, adding contrast to our miniatures and making them feel much more authentic. Our final tip of the day has to do with how thick your product is. Here we can see 2 variants of the same product. In the first instance, we have a solid product. As a contrast, here is a hollowed version, which uses less resin and is, therefore, more transparent. We will apply varnish coats on the product to further appreciate the difference in transparency. Additionally, Thinner resin products will interact much better with things such as LED lights. After all, we are always looking to add new layers and dimensions to our minis. And that will be all for this video. Transparency can be a bit scary when it comes to painting, but it also adds a whole new dimension to the color and the feel of your miniatures. We hope these tips help you work on your effects and with your painting in general. See you guys in the next one!